This one attachment blocks 90% of spiritual healing. My friends, tonight we gather not to seek healing, but to understand why healing so often seems not to come even when we have read the books, even when we have practiced the silence, even when we have believed with all the might of our human hearts. It would be very easy to say, I have not been healed because God has not answered. But that cannot be so, for the word of God is eternal. Before they call, I will answer, and while they are yet speaking, I will hear. Isaiah 65:24. No, it is not the failure of spirit. It is never the silence of God. It is always the noise within us, the subtle grasping, the hidden clinging, the unspoken yes, but that lives deep in the crevices of the human mind. And so I must say this plainly, for you will not find freedom until you hear it clearly. Most spiritual healing does not fail, it is blocked. It is held back by something so close to us, we do not even see it. Something we love, something we have grown used to. It is not wicked. It is not shameful. It is simply human attachment. We come to God with a prayer, but the prayer has a demand behind it. God, please heal me, but leave my opinions, my plans, my outcomes intact. We ask for light, but only if it shines on what we want. And the Master said, no man puts new wine into old bottles, else the bottles break, and the wine runs out, and the bottles perish. Matthew 9:17. The wine of spirit cannot be poured into vessels shaped by fear or personal desire. So let me say it again. Healing is not denied. It is postponed by us. It is not a punishment. It is a kindness. For what would it profit you if you were healed in body, but remained enslaved to false belief? What would it gain you to be well for a season, but still separated from the inner kingdom? When the man came to Jesus and said, Master, heal me, the Master did not ask for a list of symptoms. He did not diagnose. He did not prescribe. He said, wilt thou be made whole? John 5:6. Not will you get over this disease, but will you be made whole? Will you let go of the one thing that separates you from your wholeness? That is the great question before us tonight. Are we willing to be made whole? Or are we still bargaining with God? Are we still saying, heal me, Lord, but do not touch my attachments, my family idols, my financial desires, my pride, my concepts about justice, or how life should look? Beloved, this is not said to shame you. It is said to liberate you. I have sat with men and women who wept for healing, who begged for peace, and who would not loosen the smallest rope that tied them to a false identity. And yet, I have seen the instant someone releases that last hidden attachment, healing rushes in like the breath of God. And so tonight, I do not ask you to seek healing. I ask you to lay down whatever you are still clinging to that makes healing necessary, because you cannot be both the seeker and the knower. You cannot be both the frightened patient and the light of the world. Paul said, I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. Galatians 2:20. That is the secret. That is the inner key to all healing, to all harmony. Christ cannot live in you while you are still trying to live for yourself. Something must be surrendered, not as a sacrifice, but as a joyous release. I will close this section with a word from the Psalms. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. Not do more, not say more, just be still And in that stillness, the presence that already is will make itself known. And in its presence, there is no disease, there is no fear, there is only the truth. I am the Lord that healeth thee. Exodus 15:26. Let us then rest, not in effort, but in the quiet assurance that nothing needs to be added to us. Only one thing needs to be released. The one thing, the hidden, clutched thing. And when that is gone, the Spirit flows freely, as it always has, waiting only for us to stop standing in the way. Let us go deeper now, not further in explanation, but deeper into the realization of what spiritual healing truly is. Because unless you understand what spiritual healing is, you may continue to confuse it with all the things that it is not. Spiritual healing is not the correction of matter. It is not the mending of a body. It is not the making of a bad condition into a better one. These are the works of human effort, valuable in their own place, but they are not the activity of spirit. No, spiritual healing is the revelation of truth in consciousness. It is the unveiling of the presence that was never absent, the uncovering of the perfection that was never marred. The psalmist says, He sent His word and healed them. Psalm 107-20. Not He sent a technique or a treatment or a visible force, but His word, that invisible activity of spirit which, when received in stillness, dispels the appearance of error. And so we must begin by seeing that there is nothing to be healed. There is only something to be revealed. The world you see is not sick. It is misunderstood. It is not broken. It is misperceived through the lens of personal sense. Think on this. Jesus never healed a man. He recognized truth where others saw disease. He looked upon the leper and said, Be thou clean, not as a command to change the flesh, but as a declaration of the reality that already was. When the multitude brought him the sick, he did not pray for healing. He lifted his eyes to what? To the heaven of right vision. I lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. Psalm 121:1. And so we too must learn healing is not something you do. It is something you see. It is not something you bring about. It is something you behold. What did hinder you? Pick up your bed and walk. John 5-8. Not because something has changed, but because you now realize it never had power over you. Let me give you an illustration. Suppose you sit in a dark room, convinced that a snake is coiled in the corner. You scream. You tremble. You cry out for help. But someone comes in, lights a lamp, and says, There is no snake, it is only a rope. Now tell me, was there any healing? Was something fixed? Or was an illusion dispelled? That is the nature of spiritual healing. It is not a power to overcome disease. It is the truth that there is no disease in God. And if God is all in all, then where did the disease come from? God saw everything that He had made, and behold, it was very good. Genesis 1:31. Has God remade the world since then? No, beloved. God has not changed. The only change occurs in our perception, and that change is not brought about by effort, but by the surrender of human thought and the yielding to divine awareness. Be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. That renewal is not an improvement, it is a replacement. It is the dropping away of all that we have believed so that we may see what already is. You may ask, but what of pain, of illness, of fear? I do not ask you to deny appearances. I ask you to stop believing in them. Do not fight them. Do not affirm against them. Simply turn away, not from compassion, but from personal reaction. Jesus never resisted evil. He knew it as nothingness. And so the true work of spiritual healing is never in the outer scene. It is in the quiet chamber of consciousness where we come to rest in the realization, I and the Father are one. John 10:30. One life, one being, one substance. And if that is true, how could there be anything but harmony? The Master walked on water not to show his power, but to show us that the laws of spirit transcend the beliefs of sense. He healed the blind, not to prove divinity, but to reveal that sight is not in the eye, but in the light of awareness. You are not healed by changing your body. You are healed the moment you stop trying to fix anything and know the truth of your being. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. John 8:32. Not knowing about it, not repeating it, but knowing it in the stillness of your heart. Let us understand then, all spiritual healing is the action of truth upon consciousness. It is the realization of God as the only power, presence, law, substance, and activity. It is the disappearance of the belief in two powers, the belief that something can oppose God. There is no power in disease. There is no law of infection. There is no reality in discord. These are the images of a world built upon appearances. And the moment you see through them, not with your eyes, but with your soul, the healing is complete. It was never a process. It was always a recognition. This is the infinite way. It is not a teaching to heal your body. It is a way to awaken from the belief that you are a body. And when you awaken, you shall find that all that the Father hath is yours. Luke 15:31. Not given to you, but always present, waiting only for you to stop dreaming. And behold, now, my friends, we come to a very delicate point in the unfoldment of spiritual healing, and I must speak it slowly, so that it does not pass you by as mere philosophy or poetic expression. This point is not academic. It is not a metaphor. It is, I assure you, the one thing standing between you and complete spiritual freedom. The single greatest block to healing the obstacle that hinders even the most devoted seeker is attachment to form. And by form, I do not mean only the body. I mean everything you have come to identify as necessary, as valuable, as mine. It may be a body, yes, but it may also be a memory, a belief, a possession, a position, a condition, or even a concept of how God should work. We come to the altar of truth with this silent, hidden phrase, still in our hearts, Lord, I trust you, but please do not take this from me. And that this, whatever it is the pier to which we still cling while trying to swim. The Master said, whosoever will save his life shall lose it, but whosoever shall lose his life for my sake shall find it. Matthew 16:25. That was not poetry. That was law. Let me tell you plainly, you cannot hold on to the form and receive the formless. You cannot serve both God and mammon. You cannot walk in the Spirit and still demand that Spirit rearrange your illusions to suit your comfort. Many come to this message hoping to improve their outer lot, and some do. But the true gift is not improvement. The gift is liberation from the belief that outer things can add anything to your being. And until that is seen, healing may come and go, but peace will remain elusive. Why? Because peace comes not from what is added, but from what is released. You see, the problem is not the body, the disease, the financial struggle, or the strained relationship. The problem is that we still believe in them as real. We give them power. We name them. We defend them. We want healing, but on our own terms. And so healing tarries not because God is slow, but because we are unwilling, not consciously unwilling, but inwardly attached. You remember the story of the rich young ruler. He came to Jesus with great enthusiasm. Good master, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? He had kept the commandments. He had done all the outer things. But Jesus, looking into his soul, said, one thing thou lackest. Go and sell what you have and give to the poor, and come follow me. Mark 10:21. And the man turned away sorrowful. Now notice, the man was not condemned. He was not rejected, but he could not go further, for he was holding to form his wealth, his sense of security, his identity. So I must ask you, what are you holding? What thought, what fear, what hope, what identity have you secretly guarded? Perhaps it is the idea that your body must be well to feel spiritual, or the belief that without a certain person you cannot be fulfilled, or the expectation that God will manifest supply in your way. All of this is attachment to form. And attachment to form is the refusal to trust the formless presence of God. Let me say it again. Healing does not come when we get what we want. Healing comes when we no longer need what we thought we wanted. The prophet Elijah stood on the mountain. There was wind, fire, and earthquake, but God was not in them. Then came the still small voice. That voice did not speak through spectacle. It came in the absence of form, and it brought with it the only thing that can ever truly heal. The realization that God is all, and where God is all, there is nothing else. No fear, no disease, no lack, no me trying to get better. There is only the one I am that I am. Exodus 3:14. The still small voice never says, let me fix this for you. It says, let me be you. But how can spirit live through you when your house is full of old furniture, ideas, attachments, images of how things should look? If any man will come after me, let him deny himself. Matthew 16:24. That denial is not of joy or goodness or beauty. It is the denial of form as source. And the moment you release that one final thread, whatever it is, the flood of spiritual power moves in unresisted. It was never absent. It was simply waiting to be received. So this is our task, and it is not easy, not to add more truth, but to empty out the false, to become still, to yield, to say, Lord, even this I let go. And when the final form dissolves, whether a fear, a belief, a desire, you will find that what is left is not emptiness, but the presence itself. And in that presence, healing is not achieved. Now, let us come closer still. We have spoken of form in a general way, but it may help some of you if I speak plainly, because many walk the path with sincerity and devotion. but do not recognize the particular forms they are still attached to, and wonder why healing seems far off, why peace remains fleeting. I will not speak of these as errors or faults. They are simply the remnants of the human sense, the beliefs we have inherited, absorbed, and called normal. But the way of spirit is not the way of this world. And so if we would walk the infinite way, we must see these attachments for what they are, not sins to be punished, but shadows to be released. Let us begin with the most common, attachment to the body. Now, do not misunderstand me. The body is not evil. The body is not to be hated or ignored. But when the body becomes our identity, our treasure, our project, then we are living in the shadow. The Master said, "Take no thought for your body, what ye shall eat or what ye shall wear." Matthew 6:25. And Paul said, "Glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's." 1 Corinthians 6:20. Not by fixing the body, but by realizing it is not your body, it is the temple of the living God. Spiritual healing does not come by trying to get the body well. It comes the moment we release the body from our demand that it be well and recognize it instead as the outer expression of the consciousness that is now filled with God. Another attachment, money and material supply. How deeply this is ingrained. We say we trust God, and yet we tremble when the bank account dips or the bills mount. We practice gratitude, but secretly calculate how much more we need, and we wonder why supply seems limited. My beloved, spirit is never limited. All that the Father hath is mine, Luke 15:31. But that is only true when we stop claiming it as ours. When we release the belief that supply comes from persons, paychecks, inheritances, clients, then and only then can we discover the secret. God is the source, and I am the transparency through which it flows. Then there is the attachment to relationships. How sacred we make them. How deeply we believe that this person or that connection is essential to our fulfillment. And we cry out, "Lord, heal this relationship," when in truth what must be healed is our belief that another person holds our peace. God does not withhold companionship. God is not cruel. But as long as we believe we need a person to be whole, we are saying God is not enough. "Thou shalt have no other gods before me," Exodus 20:3. No other gods, not even the smiling face of one we love. Then, too, we are often bound by our attachment to human approval. Oh, the subtle forms it takes, the desire to be understood, to be seen as good, to be respected for our efforts. We do not see it, but it is there. And every time we shape our life to win a reaction from another, we have stepped away from our center. Spiritual healing cannot flow through the one who is still governed by the world's opinion. He made himself of no reputation. Philippians 2-7. The Master spoke truth, whether it was received or rejected. So too must we, in quietness and in faith. Another deep attachment, spiritual knowledge itself. This one is very subtle. There are those who know the letter of truth, who can quote scripture and metaphysical principles, who have studied for years, and yet they have not found the fruit of the Spirit. Why? Because they are still attached to knowing. They seek to possess truth rather than yield to it. But truth is not a possession, it is a presence. It is not memorized, it is realized. And so we must even release our knowledge, our practices, our techniques, and say, "Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth," 1 Samuel 3-9. Finally, the most dangerous attachment of all, the desire for healing itself. You may not see it, but this desire, noble as it seems, is often the final rope. As long as we come to God to get something, even health, even peace, we are not yet in surrender. We are still seeking an effect rather than seeking the cause. You remember in Scripture, the 3 Hebrew boys were cast into the fiery furnace, and their words to the king were these: "Our God whom we serve is able to deliver us, but if not, be it known unto thee, O king, we will not bow." Daniel 3:17-18. That is the consciousness of true surrender. Whether or not healing comes, I will still love God. Whether or not this situation resolves, I will still abide in the presence. When that is your attitude, when healing is no longer your goal, but God alone, then healing flows not as a reward, but as the natural activity of truth revealed. So search gently, beloved. In stillness, ask yourself, what am I still holding? What do I believe I cannot live without? And then say to that very thing, I release you. You were never my source. You were never my security. My life is hid with Christ in God. Colossians 3:3. And then, do not struggle. Do not strive. Simply rest. For now the way is open. Now the dam is broken. And the living waters which were always waiting can begin to flow. Now, beloved friends, we have come to a place in this journey that may stir your heart more deeply than any before. For having spoken of attachments, of the beliefs, the images, the desires that quietly block the flow of healing, we must now look at what happens when these things are truly released. And I say look because what it feels like and what it is are not the same. To the human sense, the release of attachment always feels like sacrifice. It feels like something is being lost. It feels like something dear must be laid upon the altar, and the mind trembles. Must I give this up? Must I really walk away from what comforts me, protects me, fulfills me? But here is the mystery. Sacrifice is never real in God. There is no loss in the kingdom. There is only the exchange of the false for the true, of the shadow for the substance, of the form for the reality. You see, it is only the human mind that mourns. It is only the personal self that says, but if I surrender this, what will I have left? And the answer comes not as philosophy, but as spiritual law. He that loseth his life for my sake shall find it. Matthew 10:39. Not maybe, shall. When Abraham was asked to offer Isaac, that was not the voice of cruelty. That was the voice of God saying, are you willing to know me, even above what you cherish most? And when the knife was lifted, the ram appeared, and the sacrifice was not required, because it never was. What was required was the release of the fear that God would take something away. Understand this. Spirit never takes anything from us. It reveals that what we were clinging to was never ours to begin with, never ours in truth. And so what appears as sacrifice is only the passing of a mirage. And when the illusion dissolves, the eternal reality stands revealed. This is why so few enter the spiritual path with both feet. Many approach it, touch it, enjoy its peace when it is convenient. But few are willing to follow where it leads, for it leads inward. It leads through the fire, not the fire of suffering, but the fire that burns away illusion. It leads to the cross, not the cross of punishment, but the cross that marks the end of the personal will. And then it leads to the tomb, not the tomb of death, but the quiet chamber where the self dies and the I rises. Now, let us bring this very near to our daily experience. Suppose the spirit within says, "Leave this business, for it no longer expresses my activity," or "Withdraw from this relationship, for it no longer serves the unfolding of truth," or even "Let go of your demand to be healed. Let go of your need to be seen, to be right, to be strong." What will the mind say? It will cry out, "But I cannot. This is too much. It is all I have." And the spirit waits patiently, lovingly, without pressure, until at last something deeper within us answers, "Not my will, but thine be done." Luke 22:42. And in that moment, the moment of inner surrender, the so-called sacrifice dissolves. We do not lose what we feared. We lose the fear. We lose the dependency. And in its place, we gain God. This is the teaching of every true mystic. If you would be perfect, sell all you have and come, follow me. Matthew 19:21. Not because your possessions are evil, not because your comforts are wrong, but because you cannot serve two masters. You cannot live by grace and still cling to the arm of flesh. You cannot dwell in I am and still demand a future of your own design. So I say to you, gently and with great love, if the Spirit asks something of you, obey, even if it seems hard, even if it appears as loss, for you are not being asked to suffer. You are being invited to wake up, to discover the kingdom that was always within you. And remember this, nothing real can be taken from you. What is truly yours, what is God's own expression as your life, cannot be lost, broken, or threatened. Only illusions fade, only shadows pass. And when they do, the light shines through. Spiritual healing, then, is not a technique. It is not a treatment. It is the fruit of obedience, the natural result of living in surrender. It is the harvest of one who says, "I want nothing but thee, O Lord." And when you mean that, not just in word, but in the stillest place of your heart, everything is added. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you, Matthew 6:33. Not because you deserve them, not because you have earned them, but because you are no longer standing in their way. This is the way of the mystic. It is the way of the cross, but it is also the way of the resurrection. And what lies on the other side of sacrifice is not less, but more, not emptiness, but fullness of joy. And now, beloved, we come to the wonder, yes, the holy mystery of how the breakthrough truly happens. You have seen that healing is hindered by the attachments we carry, and you have heard the truth that what appears as sacrifice is but the releasing of shadows. But the question now arises, how is the release accomplished? How is the attachment loosed from the heart that has clung to it for a lifetime? How do we cross the invisible line from bondage to freedom, not by force, but by grace? The answer, and it is always the same, lies in that quiet phrase we must never take lightly, the still small voice. 1 Kings 19:12. This voice is not a thought. It is not the voice of reason. It is not even the repetition of spiritual truth. No, this voice, when it speaks, does not come from you. It does not pass through the intellect. It arises from the deep center of being. And when it does, it carries with it the authority and power of the infinite. This is the voice that spoke to Elijah not in the wind, nor in the fire, nor in the earthquake, but in the silence. And when he heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle, for he knew he was standing not in thought, but in the presence of God. Now I say to you, healing comes the moment that voice is heard. The voice may not speak in words. It may come as a lifting, as an inward breath, as the melting of a hardness you did not know you carried. And in that moment, though nothing outward has changed, the attachment is gone. It falls from you like a garment no longer needed. Do you remember the words from the Psalms? He uttered his voice, the earth melted. Psalm 46:6. That is not poetry. That is the very truth of spiritual healing. When the still small voice is heard in you, the whole structure of belief built upon fear, desire, possession melts, and in its place stands the formless freedom of being. This is why I tell you again and again, do not try to fix your problem. Do not try to release your attachment by willpower or effort. Do not use truth as a tool. Instead, come to stillness. Come to the quiet inner chamber where thoughts have ceased and waiting is all that remains. For in that waiting, something takes place. The world does not know it. The mind cannot understand it. But those who live in the Spirit come to recognize its movement, its grace. And in that recognition, something shifts within. The thing you feared is no longer there. The thing you craved loses its hold. And you realize, I did not let it go. It was taken from me in love, by love, through love. The Apostle Paul spoke of this when he said, Eye hath not seen, nor ear heard, neither have entered into the heart of man the things which God hath prepared for them that love him. But God hath revealed them unto us by his Spirit. 1 Corinthians 2:9-10. This revealing is not intellectual. It is not emotional. It is the divine activity within consciousness. And it is initiated not by your effort, but by your willingness to be still. Let me tell you something very sacred. The still, small voice cannot be commanded. You cannot summon it, but you can make yourself available to it, and that is all the infinite requires. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. Revelation 3:20. Not at your outer door, but at the door of your heart. And when you are still enough, quiet enough, surrendered enough to open, that voice enters, and when it enters, it heals. It does not change your world by rearranging the outer scene. It changes your world by removing the belief that the outer has power. And in that shift, the chains fall, the blindness lifts, the pain dissolves, not because you did something, but because you ceased doing long enough to hear the one who has been speaking all along. You will know when the voice has spoken. It may come in a moment of meditation. It may come when you are walking quietly or sitting alone without expectation. It may even come in the very heart of your distress. But when it speaks, or even when it brushes past you in silence, you will feel something break open within. And in that moment, you are healed. Not because the condition has changed, but because you are no longer attached to it. You have ceased calling it mine. You have ceased defining yourself by it. And in that divine detachment, the Spirit moves freely once again, and where Spirit is, there is liberty. This is how the attachment is broken, not by violence, not by struggle, but by the touch of God within you. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. John 10:27. That is the way. That is the practice. That is the path. Not seeking to destroy the error, but listening for the voice that reveals there is no error. And once that voice is known, Once it becomes familiar, trusted, and welcome, there is no more fear, because you know that healing is never far, never delayed, never dependent on human ability. It is always a breath away, waiting only for you to be still enough to hear. I want to share with you now, not a parable, not a metaphor, but a real experience, one which stands not as an exception, but as a living illustration of everything we have touched upon thus far. There was a woman who came into this teaching with great sincerity. She had suffered for many years with a physical condition. I will not name it, it does not matter. You may call it incurable. The body had been through much. The doctors had said all they could say, and she came not as a desperate soul, but as one drawn not to heal a disease, but to find peace in God. At first, she studied the letter diligently. She read the books, listened to the recordings, wrote down her truth statements, and practiced them as faithfully as any student could. She would sit in meditation. She would say, God is all, God is my life, there is no power but God. And yet, nothing changed. Days turned to weeks, weeks into months, and still no sign of healing. She grew discouraged, not with God, but with herself. Perhaps I am not spiritual enough, she thought. Perhaps I still lack faith. Perhaps there is something I am missing. One day, during a class much like this one, she heard something she had not truly considered before. It was not a new truth. It never is. It was the same truth, but this time it pierced the veil. Stop seeking healing. Seek only the realization of God's presence. She went home that night and did not meditate to be healed. She did not declare the truth to change her condition. She sat in silence, and for the first time, she said not with her lips, but with her heart, Father, even if I never get well, I will still love thee. I will still seek thee, not for health, not for comfort, but to know thee as thou art. That, my friends, was the surrender. That was the letting go of the final attachment, the idea that God existed to fix her. That very night, no vision came, no voice, no flash of power, just a deep peace, a stillness, and she slept. In the morning, she rose from bed and noticed something strange. The pain was not there. She moved about, cautiously at first, thinking perhaps it would return, but it did not. It never did. Not that day, not the next, not ever again. The healing had occurred, but it had not come through the repetition of truth, nor the strength of faith, nor the work of prayer. It came in the moment she no longer needed it to. It came in the moment when truth became more important than results, when God was no longer seen as a means to health, but as the very life itself. What happened in her was the same that happened with the woman who touched the hem of Christ's garment. If I may but touch his garment, I shall be whole. And Jesus turned not to her body, but to her soul, and said, Thy faith hath made thee whole. Matthew 9:21-22. Faith, not in a result, but in presence, in the reality of the invisible, in the surrender of the need to be better, and the yielding into thou art. This, then, is the turning point for every soul on the path of healing. It is the inward shift when we stop asking, how can I get rid of this? And begin saying, Speak, Lord, even if you do not take this from me, I am thine. And the moment that is real, not rehearsed, not performed, but real, the burden lifts, the attachment breaks, and the spirit which has never been absent, begins to flow freely once again. It is the Spirit that quickeneth, the flesh profiteth nothing, John 6:63. That Spirit was always present. It was only blocked by the belief that something else mattered more. So I say again, if healing is delayed, look not to the condition, but inward. Ask, is there anything I have placed above the presence, not as condemnation, but as invitation? The Spirit is always knocking, always ready to flood the soul with its peace and dissolve the appearance. But it waits for the last thread to loosen, the final idea of mind to fall away. And when it does, healing becomes natural, inevitable, and irreversible, because it is no longer healing. It is revealed wholeness. Beloved, by now you may have felt within yourself a deep stirring. Perhaps you've begun to glimpse your own attachments, quiet, hidden loyalties that have lived within your consciousness for many years. And perhaps you've even said, yes, I see this now. I'm ready. I want to let it go. But I must stop you there, not to discourage, but to tell you the most important truth of all. You cannot let go of the attachment yourself. You cannot unbind your own heart. You cannot untie your own soul. Why? Because the you who wants to do this work is the very self that must dissolve. The one who wants to release the chain is still the one who is holding it. This is not a failure. It is grace. For if the human mind could purify itself, surrender itself, and transform itself, it would have done so long ago. But it cannot, and it was never meant to. The Master said, I can of mine own self do nothing. John 5:30. And if the Christ said this, shall we not say it also? You see, the task is not yours. The power is not yours. The work is not yours. The work is God's, and it is done in silence, in surrender, and in stillness, not in effort. This is the secret that frees us from spiritual pride, from striving, from the exhausting inner labor that imagines, if only I could release this, if only I could change myself. No. The true spiritual path is never about self-improvement. It is about self-dissolution. And only the Spirit can dissolve the false sense of self, not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord of hosts, Zechariah 4-6. So what then is your part? Your part is willingness. Your part is availability. Your part is to make no part for yourself. That is, you do not do the releasing. You watch it happen. You do not decide what to let go of or how. You bring yourself to the altar and say within, Father, I do not know what to release nor how to release it, but I place myself in thy hands. And then you wait. You sit in silence, not trying to fix, not trying to change, not even trying to understand. You simply wait until the presence announces itself. And when it does, the false disappears, not by your effort, but by its nature. You see, light does not fight the darkness. It does not push it out. It simply appears, and the darkness is gone. The Christ does not argue with error. The truth does not struggle with illusion. It simply is, and when it is known, all that is not, it dissolves. And so the attachments, the ones you have identified, and the deeper ones you still cannot see, will fall away. But they will fall not because you removed them. They will fall because you stopped holding them. because the deeper you was touched by something greater, something that is not of your mind nor your desire, but of your source. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me to proclaim liberty to the captives and the opening of the prison to them that are bound. Isaiah 61:1. That liberty is not achieved, it is received. That opening of the prison happens the moment the cell door is seen as imaginary. So hear this deeply. When you sit in the quiet, not seeking, not pushing, not manipulating, you are allowing the only true power to operate. You are stepping aside so that Spirit may do what only it can do. Remove the veil, release the grip, soften the hardness. There are no techniques for this. There are no formulas. There are no conditions. Only your stillness, only your surrender, and yes, only your trust that what you could never do for yourself, the Spirit has already accomplished. This is why the Master said, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Matthew 11:28. Not, "I will teach you how to work better, but I will give you rest. For you have labored long under the belief that your salvation, your healing, your freedom depended on your ability to change yourself. Now you know it never did. You need only yield, and the work is done not by you, but in you. Beloved, we must now pass through a final gate, one that separates those who seek spiritual healing from those who truly live in the Spirit. And it is a narrow gate. Few find it, not because it is hidden, but because they never stop walking long enough to realize that what they are seeking has already arrived. The greatest barrier to the flow of spiritual healing is the desire for it. I say this softly, for many do not yet see how it could be so. What harm is there in wanting to be healed? Is it not natural? Yes, it is natural to the human mind, but it is not spiritual. As long as you are seeking healing, you are affirming, unconsciously, that something is wrong, that something is lacking, that something must be added to you. And in that very belief, you close the door to the one thing that brings true healing, the realization that nothing is missing. Let me say this plainly. Healing does not come from seeking. Healing comes from knowing. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. John 8:32. Not the effort to know, not the longing to be free, but the actual knowing. And that knowing only comes when the seeking has ceased. You see, grace does not respond to desire. Grace does not operate as a reward, nor as a transaction. It is not given because you ask long enough, or with the right words. Grace is the nature of God. It is always present. It is always active. But it is only revealed when the mind becomes still enough to stop wanting and start beholding. Think for a moment of the lilies of the field. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you, that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Matthew 6:28-29. They do not seek to be healed, nor clothed, nor fed. They are rooted in what is. They receive the fullness of life because they never doubt its provision. And so I must tell you, dear one, the healing you want is not ahead of you. It is not in your future. It is not in some perfected version of yourself. It is here, now, within you. It has always been, but you must stop reaching for it to see that it has already arrived. I remember a man who once said, I have read every book. I have meditated every day. Why has healing not come? And the answer that came through me was not gentle in words, though it was given in love, because you are still trying to get something from God instead of realizing you already have God. You see, even the desire for God can be a barrier if it is a desire to get. But when the soul surrenders not to receive, but to rest, then the light floods in. It does not need to be pulled. It does not need to be earned. It simply needs to be welcomed. And this is the essence of grace. It is not something God does. It is something God is. God is not a giver of health. God is your health. God is not a supplier of peace. God is your peace. And when you stop asking for what God already is, when you stop treating God as a servant and begin to live as an instrument, then grace flows without obstruction. But this requires a shift, not a shift in conditions, but a shift in consciousness, a shift from waiting to receiving, from wanting to knowing, from seeking to surrendering. This is why Jesus said, "It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom," Luke 12:32. Not reluctantly, not partially, not later, now. But it cannot be received by the one who believes he does not already have it. And so the very act of seeking healing reinforces the sense of separation. That is why I say to you, stop seeking healing, begin instead to rest in the presence. Sit in silence, not with the hope of being fixed, but with the knowing that you already are whole in God. You may not see it yet. The senses may still report otherwise. But truth is not waiting for your permission to be true. It already is. Accept grace, not as an answer to a prayer, not as a result of effort, but as your nature, as your inheritance. Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. Luke 15:31. That is not a promise for the future. That is a present fact. Live in that knowing, and the healing will not be something you experience. It will be something you realize was never needed. You are never sick in spirit, never broken in soul. You are only asleep to your true nature. And now you awaken not by striving, but by stopping the search, stopping the effort, stopping the belief that God must be persuaded to bless you. God is the blessing. And the moment you stop reaching and rest your heart in what is, you will find that you have already received all. And now we arrive at the still center of the circle, the place where all movement ceases and only silence remains. This is not the conclusion of the path, but its invisible pivot for everything we have spoken of. Attachments, effort, listening, letting go, brings us to this one simple truth. Spiritual healing is never the goal. It is always the side effect. Let this settle into your being. Healing is not something you attain. It is not a result of perfect study or intense desire. It is not even the fruit of your prayers. Healing is the natural, spontaneous byproduct of something deeper, spiritual surrender. When the last effort to get is gone, when the mind no longer struggles to fix or to change, when the soul says, "Thy will be done, not mine," and means it, then grace flows. Not because you summoned it, but because you stopped resisting it. You see, we cannot earn healing. We cannot pray our way into it, affirm our way into it, or think our way into it. We cannot even understand our way into it. Healing is what happens when there is no more we in the picture at all. And that is what I mean when I say it is a side effect, a byproduct, a fragrance left behind when the false self has quietly stepped aside. Let me say it another way. Imagine a cup that is already full of water. You may try to pour fresh water into it, but it will spill. It cannot receive until it is emptied. And so it is with the soul. We must be emptied of fear, of desire, of clinging, of the sense that we are a self who must be healed. Then, and only then, can the truth be revealed. There was never anything to heal, only something to awaken. If any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new. 2 Corinthians 5:17. But that newness is not achieved by remodeling the old. It is born in the moment of cessation when you stop identifying yourself with the past, the body, the story, and simply abide in the I. That is the click. Not a thought, not a theory, but a shift in awareness, a sudden seeing, a release, a breath. Something invisible moves in you, and you realize, I am no longer concerned about healing. I only care to dwell in the presence of God. And when that happens, you look around and discover that what once tormented you is no longer present, or no longer matters, or has no more name. And you smile not because you got what you wanted, but because you no longer wanted. Now, I do not mean that pain will not return or that challenges will not appear. This is not immunity from human experience. But something has changed. The you that struggled, the you that tried, is gone. And in its place stands a deeper self, not made of effort, but made of light. That is Christ in you, the hope of glory. Not a personality, not a man from history, but the awakened presence of God as your very own being. And in that realization, healing takes place not just of the body, but of the heart, the mind, the world. Not because you asked for it, not because you wanted it, but because you stepped out of the way. He performeth the thing that is appointed for me, Job 23:14. And what is that thing? It is the revelation of God, the unmasking of reality, the melting of illusion. And when that occurs, what we call healing is but the echo, the ripple left behind by grace, moving through the soul. So, my beloved friend, do not seek healing. Do not even seek freedom. Seek only to dwell in the secret place of the Most High. Seek only to hear that still small voice, not for instruction, but for companionship. And in that dwelling, all things are fulfilled. My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness, 2 Corinthians 12:9. That is not comfort, it is a law. And when you rest in that sufficiency, without asking, without fearing, without striving, you will know the truth. Healing was never something to be achieved. It was the signpost that you had finally come home. Now, we have spoken together for some time, and we have walked gently through the invisible landscape of truth. But I would not send you away with more thoughts. I would not leave you with instruction or inspiration. I would leave you with silence. Because it is only in silence that healing takes place. It is only in silence that God is known. Let us then close not with words, but with a quiet turning inward, not to do anything, not to solve, not to reach, not even to understand, but simply to be still and know. So I ask you now, softly, what is your one thing? Not many things. One, what is that thing within you that still clings? The one fear, the one desire, the one thought you have not yet laid upon the altar. Do not name it aloud. Do not analyze it. Simply become aware. Become aware that it is there and that you no longer need to protect it. You no longer need to fix it. You no longer need to resolve it. You only need to let it dissolve in the presence. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me, Psalm 51:10. This is the only prayer that remains not a request, but a release. So now, let the mind grow quiet. Let the breath fall gently. Let the hands rest. Let the body be forgotten. You are not waiting for anything. You are not trying to accomplish anything. You are simply here. And in this here-ness, in this still awareness, comes a whisper, not with words, but with life. My child, I was never far. You need not hold on. You need not let go. You need only turn inward and open. Let the one thing fall away now. Let it sink beneath your attention like a leaf floating down into still waters. And as it disappears, do not grasp. Do not ask what will take its place. Simply rest. Rest in the I. I am. Before Abraham was, I am John 8:58. I am with you always, Matthew 28:20. I am the Lord that healeth thee, Exodus 15:26. I am thy sufficiency in all things, 2 Corinthians 9:8. Let this be your Sabbath, the inner resting from thought, from effort, from self. And now, beloved, listen. Let that which cannot be said in words rise within you like the morning sun. Let it speak, not with sound, but with knowing. And if it says nothing, know that even its silence is healing you, for you are not waiting for healing. You are dwelling in the presence, and in the presence there is no disease. There is no fear. There is no lack. There is only the I, and you are that.